Kia ora, this program is brought to you by Wellington Access Radio. Wellington Access Radio, make your voice heard.
Kia ora, everyone. You're tuning into the Blackhouse. This is episode 5 with Leah and Tommy on Access Radio 106.1 FM. How are you today, Leah?
Wow, I've just been so busy.
Yes, you have been.
It's just been a busy week. And I don't know, like...
Yeah. Right. Well, we need to get into the topic of today. There's many things that we're going to be speaking of, and the first thing that we'll be talking about is the Te Papa event that had hosted many performances surrounding Black Lives Matter. How did you feel about the event that had happened? Considering I'm assuming you were there the whole time through.
Yeah,
I was
okay. There. Yeah, we came in early, and I actually really enjoyed it. It was good to catch up with people like Wenjiku and Nshira. Like I haven't seen Nshira for a while. There was a lot of faces there I didn't know, and there was a lot of faces there that I did know from, back in the day. So it was really, I got a good vibe. I don't know, I got a good vibe. It was really interesting to see all the juxtapositions of people meeting King Kapisi for the first time, who's a really, really good friend of my oldest son's father. Yeah. So, and he's like, "Oh, I've never met you before." And I said, "Yes, I'm the mum that's kind of hiding in the back." So that was really cool to touch base. Yeah. And, seeing Dean, like I've known Dean for a few years, and his brother, Wire, so...
Who's Dean?
Dean is Te Kupu.
Okay,
from
Te
Upper
Kupu.
Hutt Posse, yeah.
Upper Hutt Posse,
yeah. So,
yeah. I was only there for an hour, but from what I had gathered, it felt like a very friendly environment, a very welcoming environment. I felt like I was walking into a marae of some sort, and not necessarily like a marae, but it felt like very familiar, familial, if that's the word, very family.
Yeah.
Yeah. It felt.
I mean, Te Papa is supposed to be the marae for New Zealand.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I did not. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So, it was interesting. Like, the forum. There was a forum where people were sort of sitting on the stage and telling their personal experiences. So we had T. Kapari was facilitating that, and we had. Let me see, there was Tony Hopkins. He's an American poet and he's lived here since the 70s. We had Chinwe Akoma, who's British-Nigerian. Tammy Crystal, African-American in New Zealand. And Ping Ann Addo, whose background was really complex. She's Black, Asian, Trinidadian, and there was something else in there. I didn't catch it all, but, it was, yeah. So they were all talking about their experiences there. And I think T did a really good job of facilitating that.
Yeah, me too. I really enjoyed that, especially like when I didn't get to hear the stories. What's called the poem that Wenjiku had.
Oh yeah, she did a poem because Wenjiku's first came over here with. Now it's Keskiri. It was a theatre, but we're going to be talking a little bit about that later.
Yeah.
And so she did a poem, but she's always, she does acting. She was I think she was the initiator of the African Association of New Zealand.
Really?
So this was decades ago. So, and that's kind of like changed and whatnot. I've got a lot of magazines from those days.
Oh, wow.
The African,
like an archive.
Yeah, I've got a lot of the archives actually because I spent about a year being the secretary, and when Tej was a baby. So so that's what I was doing, and then that's when we started the African Children's Playgroup.
Yeah,
that was 97.
97.
So and I had the committee of all African women, and
wow,
it was cool though. We did trips to the zoo. We took all the kids and did trips up to fairs and things, and we just did a lot of stuff in a very short space of time because it was just a short project.
Yeah.
And then, I said, well, here's the blueprints. I'm going to university now because apparently being black in New Zealand is incredibly political. So
wow. Do you think
and I need to know why.
Was that the first time anything like that existed, like a children's playgroup?
Yeah, it was the first one.
In the country?
In the country. It was presented in Parliament. I've got the video's actually archived about that somewhere, so I got to dig that up and put it up on our new Facebook page. Like I've been,
Oh yes,
because we've got the Facebook page is already launched, and you've got the IG going because I'm too old for this IG business.
That's okay.
I can't.
That's okay.
But with that BLM. Event. What did you think of it? Like,
honestly,
I know you were only there for a short time, but what did you think?
I think for me, it was a wake-up call. I can't really speak on behalf of other African youth, but I definitely know for a fact is we are not the first. We aren't the second. There have been people been here longer than us. Their stories matter, and to have to know that there is a platform for people to actually conduct their stories meant the world to me. Because I think it was really humbling. Because I think what people need to remind ourselves is just because when we say 60 years of African people coming to this country, 60 years is a long time. You know what I mean? 60 years, there's so many things that can happen even within 1 year. So acknowledging that for me was just so special because it reminded me, you know what, I've got more things to be proud about being an African New Zealander and really owning that. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question cohesively.
No, you did actually, because I'm just thinking like when I first came to Wellington in 96, I'd come from, New Plymouth. So when Jiku was, her theatre was, she did a lot of theatre that was kind of like activism, it was theatre with a message.
I love that.
You know what I mean? So, and she did a lot of poetry that had messages. So I think this whole thing with Black Lives Matter today, there's been that here as well, but not at the same level because, back in those days, there wasn't the technology that we have today, like the internet. Yeah.
That has revolutionized connection.
100%. Yeah. When you want to get an event out there, you used to have to walk the streets and post the posters up.
Yeah.
And then knock on people's doors and give them a flyer. Or, and people's lives are incredibly fast now and they're doing things really fast. So I think, like the way that this information got out there, like I didn't even know. And I knew about Nomaza. Nomaza was quite an activist in her own right. She was very, very connected. And you don't know Nomaza, do you?
No.
She passed away.
Nomaza, if I'm not mistaken, had been a prominent South African?
Yeah.
Yes. And she even was familiar with the likes of Nina Simone?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She had Nina Simone come to her house.
Sorry, that was name dropping at its finest, but that, to even know that, it's just fascinating.
She knew some pretty amazing people.
Yeah.
So, she was pretty good at sort of like bringing people together, like especially the young ones, which, when I was about 22 or 23, it was, she just kind of gather us around. And there was a few of us that are from that SCAP era, you know. Some of them had been, they'd had to leave the country and then come back because the parents couldn't stay in New Zealand.
Yeah.
After getting married, so they had to leave.
Yeah.
And then they came back in the 70s, right?
It's almost like for me, looking at the whole SCAP situation, it's like a juxtaposition of what I have been been force-fed, the narrative, because it's like these are African academics coming as international students to another country to gain that education.
And they were the cream of the crop too, you know,
right?
like it wasn't easy to get that right? Yeah, to get that scholarship. I mean, you had to be pretty good at what you did to get on that plan.
A very clean GPA.
Yeah, or whatever. I don't know what it was back then, but you know, like they didn't just send anybody.
And like for me, it was just like, I think for me, because I am from that 90s African migration, I'm a product more so of that 90s migration period, where that information that has come from the 70s hasn't been connected or interconnected until recently. That, of course, like when having these conversations. Yeah.
I mean, these conversations are kind of new because, I mean, I was told in my 20s, I was told by an African academic that was a very close friend of mine, and he's actually mentored me to go to university. He pushed me into it. I had no plans really to go to university, but he said that the thing about the 70s and the 60s, especially when SCAP, it was the fact it was problematic for the narrative because New Zealand did have a covert white New Zealand policy.
Yeah.
So those students came on a special program, but when those programs were completed, they had to leave. So like if you started dating or going out or even married in New Zealand, you had to leave with them to go back to you couldn't stay in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And this is, I've had to even just get some of that information corrected on Tiara Encyclopedia, right? Because they had right under SCAP, they had Colombo Plan, and Colombo Plan focused 100% on Asian countries, Asia and India,
And that wasn't fair.
Yeah, but let's go to a song, eh?
You know what? How about that? The first track that we'll be playing is Baro, which means pretty, if I'm not mistaken.
And Barrow, I pronounce it really bad. I've been calling him Barrow.
Ah, okay.
All right, but that will be because he is Ethiopian.
Oh.
He's Ethiopian from Australia.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So is it Melbourne, Australian?
Melbourne artist, yeah.
African artist called Baro, and the song is called Pretty. You're tuning into the Blackhouse with Leah and Tommy. This is Access Radio 106.1 FM.
Talk about the earth. I'ma guess it's what you is, cause I know this what you worth. From the thoughts up in your brain to the lipstick in your purse, the machete in my chest, plus it's bleeding in the it hurts, baby. And it hurts so bad. And it hurts so bad. Girl, I ain't got my license, but this something's got you priceless. I think you're too pretty for me.
You're tuning into the Blackhouse. This is Access Radio 106.1 FM with Leah and Tommy. So back to I guess you could say historical references. Please do tell us what the audience are missing out on.
Well, our audience,
Yeah, our
or the
audience,
audience at BLM?
Oh, you could say the what's called our audience that are listening here today, tuning in.
Okay, well, I don't know if they're missing out on anything, but I mean, I think it's really cool to like point these things out, that we do have a little bit of a history, right? Of Black African connections with Māori and Pacifica activists against racism movements, right? So, like, this is where Te Kupu and King Kapisi come in. So, first of all, Te Kupu's had a long history with Upper Hutt Posse, basically.
Who is Upper Hutt Posse?
Well, it's New Zealand's first rap group.
Okay.
Yeah, and they came from Upper Hutt. That's where they're from.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the original members of that was Te Moana Rapley, who's Jamaican Cook Islander. And when we first saw Te Moana, like, all us girls were looking at her like, she's half black. Like, you can tell she's black.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she grew up in a Cook Island family, so in New Zealand. And she's shared a little bit of her story on Black Creatives Aotearoa. Yeah. So Te Kupu, Upper Hutt Posse has a history of speaking truth to power about racism and stuff. And King Kapisi himself, like, he's spoken quite at length about the challenges with within the Samoan culture of, especially to do with religion and stuff like that. I remember there was one song, I think it was really challenging, that
he performed at the...
I don't know if he performed that song there, but, it's one of his older songs was about... the church and the role the church has, and how, a lot of people, and they pay a lot of money to the church, and, and how that's putting, weight
and like, where's
on
that
families.
money is like going, and if it's serving the community, is that what?
Well, I haven't heard the song for a while, so I don't know if those questions were asked, but maybe, but you can look that up. I mean, I had to go and wiki some of this information because they do have wiki pages, so.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And another one was the example of Keskiri. Now, Keskiri came to New Zealand in 1979, and they were a black theatre group from London.
I watched a little bit.
You watched a little bit of it?
10 minutes of it.
Yeah, I put the link up on our page on Facebook. So what did you think of what you watched?
I was like, wow.
Yeah.
That was very fascinating because what's called a marae or a whakapapa, an iwi, wanted to introduce these people, if I'm not mistaken, and actually give them the proper introduction to New Zealand soil. Yeah. And that was really, really nice because I could see how receptive they were to it. They were like, wow. They were very humbled by it. It was a cultural experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely recommend people go watch it because I was told about it before I even knew there was a video.
Wow.
And I came across the video. What was the website? I can't remember the website that I found the video on, but it was I think it was Films for Activism or something like that. And I was like, Wenjiku? Like, what? And then I'm like,
she was on this.
She's in it.
So she came from the UK?
That's how she came to New Zealand. But,
is she West Indies, if I'm not, or is she
Wenjiku?
Is she from...
No, Wenjiku's Kenyan.
Kenyan.
Yeah, right. So basically the group came down here and the event, the film was co-produced by Merita Mita, who basically was the first woman to start decolonizing our media in New Zealand. She passed away in 2010, R.I.P.
Yeah.
And also Martin Saunderson. Now, Martin Saunderson is the original writer of Shortland Street.
What?
And he married Wanjiku.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's all these connections of activism, blackness meeting Indigenous, meeting Pacific Island, and we've got that history here. So to me, it's always been a case of if you're going to talk truth to power about racism, our natural alliances should be within these communities.
Yes.
Because we don't have a black middle class in New Zealand.
No, we don't.
And race and class are very interconnected here. I mean, America has a black middle class. I don't even think UK really has a black middle class.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And because we've got these interconnections of race, different races, like Māori and Pacifica, and then we've got African, and we're having these similar sort of experiences with police, for example. Dean told some really interesting events that happened to him. He told a story about what happened to him with the cops.
Yeah.
So
at the event?
Yeah, at the event. I think it was before you came, though.
Oh, okay. I definitely did miss out. But that was just a whole bunch of information that I'm going to listen to again.
and like I recommend people like look up look up Wanjiku's resume and look up this go and watch the video. Keskiri Aroha was the video that they made. The group was called Keskiri. So, yeah.
Wow, I'm very much so speechless. Sorry, I feel very overwhelmed.
Yeah,
with
all
this information.
Upper Hutt Posse was formed back in '85. I think they started off first as a rap reggae group in '85. In '87, I first sort of started listening to the music in '87.
Yeah,
and I'm pretty sure that's when Terry Moana Rapley was a part of the group, and it was just amazing to see somebody who looked like us up there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I remember saying to Tanya, is she half African? Is she like?
Yeah.
But it was never like really discussed. So, openly. Yeah. And I think that's the thing about, growing up here is that like we're starting to acknowledge that we're here.
Yeah.
So why wait all this time like I've had
60 years.
to acknowledge that stuff. Like you're born here.
Yeah.
And, are you going to go through 40 years of your life saying, I don't know if I'm connected to this place?
I really need to say this and say this very much so importantly. I had a conversation with a friend of mine. She is an African American. And I had told her all my life I wanted to be an African American. I wanted to be a Black American. Because I think for a lot of my life I never felt like I was a part of here. I think I've experienced so much. I think this is a lot of experience that Africans have in New Zealand where you're always excluded. You're never a part of the conversation.
Yep.
You're not necessarily a Pākehā New Zealand. You're not necessarily Indigenous New Zealand. You're not necessarily Polynesian New Zealand. You're just kind of like always on the cusp because you're born here, but you're African.
Yeah.
And you, like you've mentioned before, New Zealand is a tribal nation.
Yeah.
So that makes the world of differences. And that,
which tribe do you belong to?
Yeah.
And then, you've got all these, when you've got,
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just went out. Yeah, come on, Tommy.
Okay, well, that's the thing. I think had I been informed about all these little dots of history, it would have made the world to me, just as growing up, like if I was 19.
A sense of rootedness to where you are.
100%.
As well as being able to accept that you're an African identifying in New Zealand.
And on top of that, it kind of feels political in itself, saying, I'm an African New Zealander.
Yeah.
And like to others, it's like, oh, okay. You know what I mean?
But I understand that whole thing about like wanting, basically trying to be African American when you're African and you've come to New Zealand and suddenly you're putting on a faux American accent,
Right.
And you're claiming that you're from wherever, and
New
I've
York.
met so many people.
York.
So many people over there's one guy we actually gave a nickname to the city that, he claimed to be from. So we just started calling him that. But, it was hilarious because I said, where did you stop off in America to get that accent? Like,
Yeah.
bro, you came straight from,
Africa.
and you came straight from Africa to here. Like, what's going on?
To like Wellington.
To Wellington, yeah. But
yeah.
like, I mean, even me growing up, because like in the 70s, right, New Zealand actually had a lot of African American programming. So we had all these old sitcoms on television, and at that time, now I've tried to get this clarified from Stats New Zealand if we actually had a ethnic identity thing of Negro, because I was told growing up that on census that me and my sister had to tick the Negro box. So I don't know if the Negro box was on the stats form or whether Negro was something that you elected to be, right? So I was being told I was a Negro in New Zealand, right? Like officially. Right?
What?
But I always knew that, it's not like I didn't know who my dad was. I knew who my dad was.
Yeah.
Like I knew I had a dad. He was from Tanzania. But for the whole thing of being black in New Zealand, then you're a Negro. Okay, whatever. But, when you're 6 or 7, it doesn't matter. But I did know that we had these TV programs, and we had That's My Mama. We had the Good Times. I think there was
I've heard of the Good Times.
Yeah.
But apparently, like, it was Good Times, but it wasn't really good.
No, it wasn't really that good. But
Apparently, it was like
the behind the
there was a
scenes
white
wasn't-
savior complex to the show.
Yeah. But I knew, I'd run home from school and I'd be catching these programs. And I'm going, okay, like my people are those people.
Because you look like this.
Yeah, those people in the television. So,
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then I'll go on about my day. But, that was just some really curious thing. Then that term on the censuses.
Yeah.
That got dropped, I think, about 78.
No way.
I think, yeah. It might have been later,
Is it
but it
because-
was still around. Like, I know that when I did a security course in Australia, I did a security course over there, and while we were on the course, there was a few Sudanese guys and some other guys from Rwanda were on the course, and when you had to enter and what your ethnicity was, they still had Negro on the form, and that was 2009. And we must have all hit that question at the same time because we were sitting there looking at each other like, what the hell is going on? Where are we?
Yeah.
And so we went into the office. There was a whole lot of us that went, and he said, you can't have this on your form in 2009. What's going on? That was Perth, 2009, right?
We've come so far, right?
Not really. Perth hasn't.
We're going to go to a break, and this is a Australian Melbourne artist called Hancock, and the song is called Groove. You're tuning into the Blackhouse with Lee and Tommy on Access Radio 106.1 FM.
Can't get enough of this groove. Yeah. Baby, bust it back for me, for me. Love to watch you move. Yeah. You're smooth like Jodeci. Ooh, can't get enough of this groove. Yeah. Baby, bust it back for me, for me. Love to watch you move. Yeah, you're smooth like Jodeci. Ooh, the way she glow, make a light show. But she feel alone when the lights go down. I wanna know where your mind go. Wanna pick you up when you hit the ground. Yeah, pick you up, we can fall together. Spend winter, spring, summer, fall together. We can make it rain, baby, change the weather. And I like to play, she likes to play. I get my way, she gets away. I like to play, she likes to play. I get my way, she gets away. I go. Yeah. Baby, bust it back for me, for me. Love to watch you move. Yeah. It's smooth like Josie. Ooh, yeah. Can't get enough of this. Go. Yeah. Baby, bust it back for me, for me. Love to watch you move. Yeah. It's smooth like Josie. Ooh, yeah. Can't get enough of this. Go.
You're tuning into the Blackhouse with Leah and Tommy on Access Radio 106.1 FM. We had just been talking about the identity of African heritage people across the globe, and specifically New Zealand, and how you were identified as a Negro, and even a Negro in Perth, Australia in 2009, when you had ticked. When you had to tick
those
a box.
terms were around.
Those terms were around.
I didn't, 1976 on the New Zealand census, it said there was, I remember looking that up for an archive we did in 2004.
Yeah.
We looked it up on the archive. We were going to do a documentary. We didn't end up doing it, but about the African presence in New Zealand, right? So I was in National Archives looking at censuses, looking at things like that, doing some research for it. And I came across the 1976 New Zealand census that still had Negro on it. And there was 3 in apparently West Auckland in 1976. I know 2 of them was me and my sister. I don't know who the other poor guy was out there all alone, but, I was like, there's a third one?
Where?
But like you were saying about what you noticed about what Tony said.
So at the event of Black Lives Matter, hosted by Te Papa, Tony had talked about his identity as a black man and how it was very important to him when he was in Europe. He had traveled to Europe. I don't recall the reasons why, but he was hearing in the States that they were coining the term African American, and to him it was just like, well, I'm a black man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What does since when had we been called African American? Because I've seen this all over what's called in some documents, in some shows where they had talked about how African heritage people in the States were referred to many things, and now they're just referred to as African American.
Yeah, I don't know what order it went in, whether it went from Negro, Black, and then African American. I think I know the African American term came up in the 60s or the 70s.
70s, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I also have friends that are African American, but they prefer to call themselves Black. Yeah. Right. I don't know really that much about it, and I mean, that would be something that I'd like to talk more with an African American or Black person, whatever they want to call themselves, because they'd know the history of it.
They'd have more to offer.
I know that it's got something to do with the way that colonialism constantly relabels people. Like when I think about blood quantum identities, like biracial, multiracial, mixed race. What is mixed race? Like half caste, quarter caste, octoroon.
Octoroons.
Yeah. And the whole mulatto.
Yeah.
Like they're racial labels.
And they even have that in what's called in the Spanish colonial world, where there's moreno, mestizo. Like there's so many ways to refer to people of different, if they're native mixed with black, or with European with what's called native, or you know what I mean.
And I mean, even in Japan and Africa, we have our names for those that are of different color, or those that are mixed race, and but I'm not making any excuses for that, because I don't. A lot of them are derogatory. You know what I mean? And I think when we start thinking about the colonial way of identifying people of color, I think that way, when you start thinking about it in that way, you're actually kind of owning colonial thought in some way. And, how much do you want to own that? I personally, what actually makes me feel happy
Say it.
Is that in Tanzania, you are who your father is.
Yeah.
Right? My father's Hehe. My father's from Aringa. My father's Tanzanian. So I feel quite comfortable saying I'm Tanzanian and New Zealand. So I'm African and New Zealand. Like that just literally that makes sense to me, rather than saying, oh, I'm a mixed race, biracial, quarter caste, mongrel, whatever. Like all of those terms. Yeah, like all of those terms. Yeah. So that was quite commonly said here. And, like what's wrong with being African New Zealander?
Right. Why can't it just stop there?
Why can't it just stop there?
I think a lot of people are just indoctrinated, and that's the reality. I think I forgot what her name was, but this one I forgot what her name is. She's like Dr. Jane or something, and she has this experiment.
Jane Elliott.
Jane Elliott. And she talks about how what's it called? Education system is just a way of indoctrinating people to white supremacy. To think, and honestly, that's what it is. It's white supremacy.
Yeah. And that's interesting that you said that, because, if you'd gone to college or primary school in the 70s and 80s like I did, you would think that our history was completely British.
Wow.
The only things that were important was what happened in Britain, Ireland, and Israel. Okay, so that's what you're getting taught in history. When Israel and Palestine and the West Bank and all this sort of nonsense. And you'd also think that part of our history was that the British came over here and saved the Maori people and basically put them on the right path. Like it was completely whitewashed.
Yeah. And
they even had written out Moriori from history. Like the thing was, and there are people still alive on the Chathams that are Moriori, right? So, this is the smudging out of identities, you know what I mean?
And that's why that gives them the leeway to actually place these new labels on these people, right?
Yeah, new labels on people. It's amazing what it's done around the globe. I mean, I had cognitive dissonance when I was told that American Indians were not only, the Indians that we know, from movies, but there was black identifying Indians. They were black Indians.
Yeah.
And I was like, hang on, I've got to really reprogram, because we've been taught to think a particular way.
That's true.
And about things. So when I think about American history now, I'm like, wow, it's so much bigger than the 400 years, from the transatlantic slave trade to America and Brazil and Latin America and all of that. So it's quite huge.
Yeah, not only I think we're
missing out on a lot.
Not only that, but I also think a part of that indoctrination is a whole heap of misogyny, and like how that plays into society today. That's just
okay.
Like in ways like such as, because the colonial history is on the compass of just okay. Let me pause. It's in the support of white men.
Right.
And that's a system it's
their history.
And it's their history. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not really about anyone else. And that's what it's centered around.
Yeah.
And I think when we can actually see that for what it is, we're able to really understand what pretenses are we existing in this system. You know what I mean? Because I think when you see it from that lens, you'll be able to identify, so how did...
You just had a thought?
Yeah, exactly. how are these trends existing in our time? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The fact that they're, what's it called? But I guess, again, if we're going to go from even an ancient Greek term of understanding democracy, it was only Greek men that were citizens, and that they were not born to slaved parents.
Right.
So if they had one slave parent, whether it was a mother or father, they could not be a citizen of the democratic society.
Right.
So if that is the foundation of democracy that we see today, then we're able to identify how Kate Shepherd had to fight for women's rights to vote.
Oh,
So that is
this is so deep.
This is deep.
All right.
I've this is coming from a very classical study lens, but that is the fact.
That's a fact.
Wow, that was a lot.
Yeah. But, okay. So what you're saying is that we can also, as African New Zealanders, figure out where we stand in that,
Yes.
in this whole system that we're having to deal with today,
Yes.
and who our natural allies might be in that system when it comes to fighting things like white supremacy,
Correct.
and the patriarchy,
Right.
right?
Say less.
And classism,
Right.
Yeah, we'll just keep going. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about being an African New Zealander? Like, how do you feel about? How do you feel like you sit in this space?
Right now, I think we're in a I think kind of like a renaissance, because now we're actually seeing ourselves on the television.
Yeah.
I don't think there's ever been a time.
I was blown away when I first started hearing African Kiwi music.
Right.
I was like, what is this? This is amazing. And then I come over here and everybody goes, who are you talking about? I'm like, how can you not know this?
Exactly. I think now more than ever, I feel extremely proud of being an African New Zealander. I don't want to claim anything that I'm not, like I once did. I wanted to be a Black British or Black American or anything that felt like I could like grasp onto. But now understanding that there is a history of African heritage people on Aotearoa soil.
60 years in 2020.
That's a lot of years.
Yeah, it's a lot of years. But it's not as long as American history, of course.
But New Zealand is 200 years old.
Exactly.
So that's like more than a quarter of its, existence. I just wanted to say that. I think we're gonna go into our third track of the day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's go for
New
it.
Zealand Hamilton-based Jane.
I love
Deasy.
Jane Deasy.
Okay.
I really think she's one of the best female rappers in New Zealand. That's just my opinion.
Yay.
So
I'm excited.
let's get into it.
And the song is About That Time. You're tuning into the Blackhouse with Leah and Tommy on Access Radio 106.1 FM.
You really don't deserve a reason. The shit that added up to your and then some. She about to free herself from all your problems. It's about that time. You really don't deserve a reason. The shit that added up to your and then some. She about to free herself from all your problems. Yeah. Why you always laying in the hut? Why is she your biggest enemy? Why she put aside the family and steady begging homies not to make a move that's gonna make you wanna leave? And why she gotta put this makeup on? But when you met her, she ain't had none on. Stumble around like she a clumsy broad that accidentally walk in the doors, and you're regretting it, just hurt her more. Yeah, and how you so impatient at the door, and when she dress up, you call her a hoe. Why you so opposed to see her glow? Why I don't pack her bags and get the going? And she still love you when you do her wrong and don't acknowledge what she's done for you. And you gon' separate her from her crew. So now her universe is only you. And how come every time she's talking to her parents, she can't look them in the eye? You just wait until she say to you, I think that it's high time. Yeah. Right isolation out in solitude. This crib ain't big enough for me and you. Pack all your baggage and your ego too. Well, move. Think crib ain't big enough for me and you. Pack all your baggage and your ego too. Well, move. Think that it's high time. Isolation out in solitude. This crib ain't big enough for me and you. Pack all your baggage and your ego too. Thank you. Yeah. You really don't deserve a reason. She done added up to your and then some. She got the free and stuff from all your problems. It's about that time. You really don't deserve a reason. She done added up to your and then some. She got the free and stuff from all your problems. Yeah. You really don't deserve a reason. She done added up to your and then some. She got the free and stuff from all your problems. It's about that time. You really don't deserve a reason. She done added up to
Kia ora, everyone. We're in our final quarter of the show. You're tuning into the Blackhouse with Leah and Tommy on Access Radio. And there's many things that we'll be talking about.
Yeah, but like, let's just first of all get in and mention some events and
Yes.
some businesses and stuff. Just do a shout out for them. I want to do first one, 24th of July at El Barrio. We're going to have Nduna at 9 p.m. and he's going to be alongside DJ Dozen and Domino Dread. So that's at El Barrio. Then on the 25th of July, Nduna's going to be at the Newtown Social Club. So that's going to be really cool. And from the 13th to the 20th of July at Te Papa, they're going to be having Matariki, but also they're going to be on the 16th of July. They're doing something called Stories of Perseverance from 5:30 to 7 p.m. And I found this really interesting, Tommy, because they're having some speakers from Parihaka, Ruakiri Hond, he's an old friend of mine, and Polynesian Panthers, Will Alolahia and Peta Siulepa are going to be talking about the connection of the Black Panther Party and the Polynesian Panthers. So how awesome is that?
That's
more
incredible.
interconnectedness between
This is so
Black
fun.
and Pacifica and Māoridom. You know, like, we just got to keep it going on.
That's
all right.
awesome.
So, and there's some other things you want to mention. Some businesses.
Yes. So we have CNC Transport and Logistics. These guys will help you go take your stuff from your old place to your new place and everything to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
And their number is 027-274-4246. I will say this again, 027-274-4246.
That's your moving guys.
Yes.
You know, and both of them are actually from Zimbabwe. So
Yes, let's
you know,
support.
we got to support black businesses. We can't be just like out here going, yeah, we're all blackity black. We're not supporting.
That's true. We also
We're not supporting anybody doing anything
That's
black.
true.
Right?
We also have Susie, who is a
Seamstress.
seamstress, and she also sells African printed face masks, which we all have gotten.
Yeah,
up
like
here.
they're so cute too. They're
are.
like $10 a face mask. I don't know, is Corona completely gone?
No, we're still at level 1, I think, or level 2.
Okay, so we're still in it.
Yeah, her number is 021-238-0283. I'll say that one more time, 021-238-0283. And lastly, the one and only Eagle Eye Painters Limited. Do tell.
Oh, Eagle Eye Painting Services Limited, right?
Services,
you know,
yes.
and he's going to do exterior, interior painting, roof painting, paint stripping, water blasting, and general maintenance. Basically, he's your all-round handy guy.
Exactly.
Okay, he just called Munya.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Munya. 0221-862-993. So that's 0221-862-993. Or you can email him on eagleeyepainters@gmail.com. You know, like, we really seriously do have to support, you know, start supporting black businesses here.
Especially because these guys all provide excellent services.
I think so.
You know, you've also been to our dear friend.
Tapiwe?
Yeah, Tapiwe.
Yeah, he's got his
Mechanic shop. Based
over in
Rolotai. And this guy will help you out with your car. And we also have Munya, who's doing all sorts of things with regards to housing. And, you know, there's also Unesu with transport and logistics. These guys are your handymen that you definitely need to go off and contact, as well as Susie, who's a seamstress and has been in this trade for a serious long time.
And I do have the number for SACMART, which is Tapiwe's Mechanics.
Tapiwe,
So,
yep.
like if you need to get your car fixed, you just need to call 0275 498 203. The other thing that's really cool is that these guys actually jumped off with their businesses during COVID, or like just before. So they had that downtime because of the lockdown and everything. So Tapiwe's Mechanics is called SACMART's Auto Centre, and it's at 57B Kingsford Smith Street in Rongotai. But give him a call first, and, so just to make sure that, he's not full on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
100%.
Get your car out there.
Exactly.
Get your car out there and get it fixed.
Brand is new.
Let's start circulating this money in our community.
Exactly. Say less.
Say less or say more?
Oh no, like as in you really said it. And yeah, I guess a question that I have to ask for you, Leah, is why do you think our identity as New Zealand Africans have always been in the limbo?
In limbo.
In limbo.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
Right?
And this is just my opinion.
Say it.
Okay. Are you sure people
go.
I think
this
it
is the
has a lot
Blackhouse.
to do with our history in New Zealand, that we did have a coverted white New Zealand policy that really wasn't accepting anything outside of the non-European kind of base as identities here in New Zealand besides, Indigenous Māori. So even if you go to the ethnic quotas or the ethnic statistics, the schedule of names for the different ethnicities in this country, you have European New Zealander, you've got Māori, and then you've got all these different ethnic identities, but you don't have New Zealander like next to it, like you have for European New Zealanders. And I've found that very interesting.
Yeah.
Because I know we've got Pacific Island people that are born here. We've got African people that are born here. We've got people from all around the world that are born here. So why is it only Europeans that have New Zealander next to their name on our ethnic schedule?
That's a great
like I don't
question.
understand that. Like, why don't we have, Indian New Zealanders? Like, and that's already been, pre-printed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not like you've also got that thing where you can add that bit on. But, like African people are not jumping on a plane and going back to Africa when they give birth. They're giving birth at Wellington Hospital.
Yeah.
We're not getting on a plane and going back to Tanzania or the Caribbean or anywhere else when we have our children. We're going to have it at Auckland Hospital or Base Hospital or,
And they're going to be raised
in
on
New Zealand.
Aotearoa soil. Yeah.
And, like, why are we feeling... And I think another thing about the limbo, okay, I think is if you're constantly being othered, it's really difficult to feel that inclusion, I think. I noticed that was something for me growing up. It was like I was there. I'm like I'm like a Forrest Gump of history. Like I'm kind of like I'm there at all these specific moments, but you don't know I'm that little face in the corner. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So it's kind of strange to, well, not strange. Maybe I think for me it just felt very difficult to feel included. Like I always felt foreign, even though I'm born here.
Yeah.
And I think that feeling of foreignness makes it difficult to accept some of these realities of where you're being enculturated at, or you've got to keep separate instead of being included. And how much more powerful would we be when we say, no, we're here, whether you like it or not. And that was actually at the end of Wanjiku's poem, whether you like it or not, we're here.
Yeah.
What about you? What do you think?
Honestly, I think you've summarized everything. And at the end of the day, we are African New Zealanders, and whether that's political or not, that is our identity. And I want to say thank you so much if you've tuned in. I hope that if you are African and New Zealander, that you've gotten some more facts to add to your pile. But to wrap
Your
up,
kitty.
yeah, your kitty. What's called our final track.
Final track for today
Is a surprise.
Is it a surprise?
It is a surprise.
Right, okay.
And that's why we're going to wrap it up. You're tuning into the Blackhouse with Leah and Tommy.
No. It can't be a surprise because this dude performed
Okay.
at the BLM thing. So, we've got to give a shout out.
Okay, can you do the honors?
Reza Biza, the OG.
Uh-huh.
And the song is Intentions.
Solo, dolo, like that's my style. Ay, moving too slow, if it's a no-go, then let me know right now. Yeah, really don't know too much. Yeah, let's wake up and roll it up. Yeah, but baby, don't fall in love, no. Yeah, she ain't got a clue what I'm trying to do. Making my boo, making my moves, I'm paying my dues, making my moves. She on my mind, she got no chill. I'm smoking good, I'm pouring gin. She off a pill, she said she don't know how she felt, just slow it down. We took a trip around the town. She shut it down. I hope that you don't leave me now. Straight out, shirt, no makeup. 3 p.m. light up, then we lay off. 4 p.m. pull up on the way out. 3 BMs, young boy on the way out. Yeah, same shit, different night, just wait for me. Just say how you feel, don't play with me. Tell dude you're done, come stay with me. She mine, she friend, she came with me. I've been so low, falling so low, dolo, like that's my style. Ay, moving too slow, if it's a no-go, then let me know right now. Yeah, really don't know too much. Yeah, let's wake up and roll it up. Yeah, but baby, don't fall in love, no. She got a clue what I'm trying to do. Making my boo, making my moves, I'm paying my dues, making my moves. Made all these songs, you said I was wrong, said I told those lies. Look up in my eyes, we wanna make this work. It's a gift and a curse, maybe we could reverse. So I wrote this verse. She on my mind, she got no chill. I'm smoking good, I'm pouring gin.
That program was brought to you by Wellington Access Radio. Get your voice heard.
Thanks New Zealand On Air for funding accessmedia.nz.